All right. Well, welcome, my friends, to the very first episode of Phase 10. I am joined today by Oats coach Trevor, Rumlish coach Ryan, and Soniqs coach Sologic. Thank you guys for joining me today and being a part of this. Let's get right into it. Let's get right into it. The one thing we wanted to address pretty much right out the gate was Ranger, and I'll let one of you boys take that topic right away.
Um,
Either, any. Let's go, Trevor.
okay. Obviously, it's a very sad situation. I didn't know the guy very well personally, but we never want to see anybody from our community, the PUBG community is pretty tight knit, go through something like that or have something like that happen to them. So our hearts go out to him. I know that they shared something on the broadcast about him as well, and we feel for him and his family and all their friends.
Yeah, I didn't know Ranger all that much. I mean, I did see him coming up with the Illusion Boys, and then slowly started seeing that he was really someone that took PUBG esports pretty seriously and wanted to learn every single time he went into a game. So yeah, to definitely will remember him, and I definitely can tell that he made his mark on the community with like some of the more key members around. So definitely hope he's resting well now.
And you said that there was a change with Illusion, specifically because of that.
Yeah, so Illusion is no longer going forward with the name Illusion, and they've chosen to dedicate their PCS3 and possibly even further runs to dedicate their team name to Ranger, and their team name is now Long Live Ranger.
Wow, awesome, awesome. I was wondering about the LLR. No, that makes sense now. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Brian, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
I don't have that much to say. I didn't really know him either. But I've seen him in scrims and in competitive play for a very long time now. So always been dedicated to the scene and been a grinder through it all. And you got to respect that. And to
100%.
lose someone that so many people seem to have very high respect for, it's that's never fun. So.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Well, rest in peace to Ranger. On to our next topic here. We wanted to talk a little bit about the roster changes. There was like an incredible roster shuffle that just went on. Just a chaos,
Yep.
right? I guess we'll start back up with Trevor. Trevor, what were you looking at? What were you seeing? What were the biggest
Uh,
changes for you?
yeah, there's obviously a big shuffle. I think teams below the top three teams because it's been a pretty clear defined top three teams with Oath, Soniqs, and SDK this year. They're trying to catch up now, and you see a lot of like power consolidating in North America, and other teams are resin at top. It already showed in week one, and yeah, I think people just feel pressured. I mean, this was kind of like the natural progression. Like post NPL days, we came into like this new era of PUBG, and everyone's kind of scattered. And now teams are starting to get better, and it's more exciting, and yeah, it's fun to watch.
100%. How about you, Ryan? I know you mentioned some names before we went live that were catching your eye.
Well, it's not even just like roster changes. Well, I mean, obviously it's roster changes, but I think one of the main things that now, almost a year after NPL, is a lot of the players that didn't have a chance, that were always good enough to be, but never had a chance because they were too young to play in NPL. You're seeing a lot of them making their emergence through NPCS. And I mean, Oath,
That's my whole team.
yeah.
Pretty
But
much.
I mean, you see newer, like even from just PCS3 alone, like who can I think of here? Like
Shin, Poon,
yeah, we got Old List as well.
Old list,
List,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
all this is a new one, that's for sure.
yep. I think there's probably a couple more that I'm missing here. I'm trying to look and see as far as just age. I mean, Vegas only got what one thing in piece or just
He
last phase
played
of NPL.
he played Worlds as well.
Yeah, last phase NPL and then Worlds and then
Right, yeah, with Ghost.
but it's mostly like Shen, Poon, Old List, and I think who else started just in PCS one or two?
Uh, I mean, if you want to technically Snakers as well, then
Yep.
Yeah.
it's been,
And obviously Snakers has become, superstar, one of the best players in PCS.
Right.
So.
Punage is another one now because
Oh yeah,
there was that one point where they had the whole like Ghost Cadets roster where they had like
Yeah.
pretty much
All
some of the most
are all the cadets playing? They're all playing.
Yeah, they're all
Yeah.
playing now. Yeah,
Even-
all the Ghost Cadets roster that the 4 like prodigies that were all
even
signed
like the add-on
in the
cadets,
future.
like Bale
Yeah.
and Shin are playing. Like the
Uh-huh.
only one we're missing is Prod. So I guess,
That's about it. Yeah, Little Prodigy, man. That's another name I haven't heard in a while. But yeah, like all of them, those are all the literal prodigies of PUBG sports back in the day.
for sure.
100%. 100%. Well, so Logic, was there anything on your mind, any of the changes that we might not have covered for you that stuck out?
I think in particular we saw like going back to Trevor's point regarding the teams like consolidating power. I guess you see like a lot of the past discussion, I guess, like regarding roster moves now is that like where do teams go? Do they find players out of the region? Do they find other players from other teams within the region? Do we look elsewhere? And we actually saw quite a few like out of region players enter like NA teams, and I think like one of the most notable ones is VTS Veritas.
Michael.
They were probably like with Michael and Jazza, both from EU, and I think
both UK.
Yeah, both from the UK. They're gathering together, making sure they can they can shoot up and just frag their way out. And I'm pretty sure they're taking time to figure things out, develop synergy. I think another team we saw that was surprising was Hello Senpai being brought in to Liberate, which was another person I follow from the CIS region. I know, like
Old
Unity and all those. Yep. And then saw Linksy make a comeback, and then Nick 101 joined up with Clueless last phase. So a lot of out of region players that were coming in, like looking for their opportunity to chase NA's best.
100%. 100%. Well, with that said, let's actually go into our first topic, which was the results of this first week of the tournament. So let's get right into that.
Cool.
So with week 1 results, we had STK topping out and absolutely fragging. They found that footing pretty much right away, and a lot of those matches were won. And if they weren't won, they were able to get enough points to make it pretty impactful. Usually, obviously, getting the left leaderboard finishes, if not towards the top. And it didn't seem like some of the teams were able to make it work and get like an immediate answer to stop them or put the pressure to just at least push that back a little bit. But let's start up with Sologic. Let's hear your take on STK's performance this first week.
Yeah, so STK, as anybody can expect from like throughout this year and competing as a history of a team, they've always been a very robust, very solid team that like can make plays all around the map. They can also they're one of those teams that is always constantly taking like the advantage of any other team making even the slightest mistake. Like the slightest door opening to STK will lead them to completely rolling the lobby. Like the slightest opening, the slightest bit you give them, they will always be there to take it. And I think they're probably like in a lot of the world's eyes, like probably like NA's like best and NA's most consistent team out there. So yeah, I definitely do agree. Like their first place was an example of that. I think they came out like the weekend literally swinging. They can do this time and time again, no matter where you put them.
100%. Anything additional from Trevor or Ryan on that?
I mean, you expect to see STK up top, and they came out and they came out swinging, like you said. So props to the boys. They had a really strong weekend.
100%. 100%.
I think what mainly seems to like separate STK as far as like being the pretty undisputed like most consistent team is that their bad games are still going to be 5, 6, 7 points. Like they're always putting points on the board. You're never really seeing them in that 3, 2, 1 like 0-point games. It's extremely rare from them. And when your bad games are still getting points compared to like you're still in the middle of the leaderboards, and then you supplement that with a 15, 20-point game or game like after that, it's just you're always going to be up in the top 5 no matter what.
Guaranteed. Which brings us on to our next people, though. The Hardshifts. The Hardshifts came out absolutely swinging on their first day there. Their first day was just, I want to say, peak Hardshifts that we've seen thus far, I don't think we've seen as dominant of a performance from those boys. We know that the roster has talent. I don't think anybody would ever disagree with that. But obviously things got a little bit more difficult once the lobbies had switched for that second day and they didn't see the same dominance. They did manage to pull it back toward the latter portion of the day, racking up some points and I believe winning the very last match. But Ryan, what were you seeing from them?
So I think the main thing with the Hardshifts is that they've obviously had a couple PCSs under their belts now, and they're starting to figure things out. Luke especially, I think, is really figuring out how to lead this team and how they're supposed to be taking fights and approaching fights, and Lobes has really stepped up as like the big playmaker that Luke needs for this team to be working. And they're winning fights pretty cleanly, and when they're taking on 2 to 3 teams that are near them and getting a lot of open room, it's really easy for Luke to make decisions and that team to find success. So
100%. Anybody else want to add to that? It looked like Trevor was going to say something there.
I mean, we did talk about this before, and I disagree with a lot of Ryan's points. It feels like that team's finally coming into their own. They're kind of always been a talking point. Like everyone expects Hardshifts to do better because of the names of that roster. I mean, Lobes is obviously an excellent fragging player. Like we talked about before the show, that all the good teams kind of have that player on the team that will just run off and kill multiple people, like make openings, and Lobes definitely has the power to do that. I know he's always like the guy when like my team is like in a 2v1 situation and it's Lobes. I'm like, Lobes could probably, he's probably gonna kill him. Like, but like he's just a very strong player, and it's good to see that team finally coming into their own. Hopefully they can keep it rolling. Just as long as we're ahead of them, eventually. But no, I'm happy to see him do it.
Exactly. So Logic, was there anything you wanted to add to the Hardships there?
Yeah, I think like this weekend of the Hardshifts was example of them playing the control game really well. And I think that they used their strengths to pretty much take over every single game they were playing on the first day. I think when you look back at I guess like Luke's like track history as an IGL, he's the kind of person where he like not only has like a very like like a very deep like depth of knowledge regarding all the other teams, but he also knows exactly how to take over a game whenever he is given the chance. So I think the Hardshifts, having everybody step up and having a great, huge, first big day was actually really important because, that established that, I guess like we can go back to when I was mentioning their kind of dark horse status. They were given like this kind of dark horse status where you always wondered what kind of team would show up. And I think this is like the first day was kind of the peak version that you would see. Maybe they even have more left, but that is something that a lot of people were looking for. So they truly showed up that first day.
100%. I'm looking forward to their performance come week 2. I think that they had that difficulty on that second day, but I think they will do well moving forward. They've proven they have the capability, 100%. And like we mentioned, the players are incredibly talented. So my hopes are high. But that brings us on to our third team, which is the Soniqs. And similar to the Hardshifts, that first day, they just came out swinging. They were performing really well. There were some questionable things that I saw happen, but overall they did great. But that's similar. That second day was a bigger struggle for them, where I think they just could not quite find that footing. But obviously it's Soniqs, right? And just very similar to Hardshifts, they have individual skill that surpasses a lot of other players. And they've clearly proven, the track record shows that the team is great and can very much so perform. So what are we thinking on the Soniqs, Trevor? I'll let you take this one.
I love getting the opportunity to roast the Soniqs, right in front of me. They came out swinging, the circles they just kept coming, they kept centering right on top of them. But no, I mean, they played well. They're obviously, they're hot right now. They just dominated the last tournament. They came out swinging, I can remember specifically there was a game in our comms, like the game that ended around Swamp, where Tig knocked Snickers in like 3 bullets, and because Snickers was pushing a compound, he's like, dude, if there's any other player in this lobby, like I wouldn't have got knocked there. He was just molding. He was losing his hair. So they're feeling themselves, and they're coming out and they're capitalizing. They play their game. They've been doing it. Wynn's been doing that for a long time from the same spots, and it's showing. So, Sinker's in the chat, so he knows. And they played well. When they didn't get the circle the next day, it didn't really go so hot. So we'll see how it goes in the next couple. And for people that don't know, if they're just watching, we've switched servers now. We played the last finals on Esports A. Now we're back on Esports B, and we'll see what happens when the circles go a different direction. So.
Oh man, 100%. How about you, Ryan? Was there anything you wanted to add to that?
I think the main thing about like a lot of the teams that you consistently see in the top is that across the board, every single player on their team is just like, if they're in a 1v1, it's almost like you're like, okay, they're gonna win it. It's like, you can have faith that like, hey, they're gonna win their 1v1s. Like, even if the team fight isn't exactly lined up exactly how you want, like obviously you prefer it as if your team fought, perfectly and like you don't lose anybody. Like, but the scary thing is that you can catch Soniqs, you can catch Oath, you can catch STK in like a bad position, but their players are all so skilled enough that it's like they can win a 1v1, 1v2, like get themselves out of it and still come out on top, even if they might lose one or two, but it's like like any other team would get wiped there. But like Soniqs is just one of those teams where it's like, I
was thinking about that today. The characteristics, like PUBG is different than a lot of games because like each of your players has to kind of be like scrappy. Like they have to make something out of nothing. I was thinking about that in that last scrim game we had today, Sean, when you guys were in the field south of Los, and I was like, these guys are dead. But then you guys spread out and you killed everybody, So I was like, that's like a characteristic of like a good PUBG team, which you guys have, is the ability to make something out of nothing. So, for sure.
100%. Let's hear from Sil himself, the coach himself. Let's hear the defense here.
The weekend feedback. What was the post game talk?
It's always kind of take every day as a learning process. Like even if like no matter where we are, I think the kind of vision and mindset that we set out on this team was that like no matter what happens, is that like you take out and you learn from every single game, and like I guess PCS2 was like a whole like I guess like the culmination of the kind of work they put in. And I think like the first day was an example of every single advantage was taken and every single advantage was turned into even bigger plays and even bigger moves. So I think the second day was kind of like even though the circle advantage may not have been there, I still think that the boys were able to kind of claw back after a few rough games, and that no matter what happened, like doesn't matter if they got a dud or not, is that there's always more games to play, and they will pick it up eventually.
100%. But that finishes up our top three, and I think we're pretty confident about those guys moving forward. But let's move into the middle teams. I'm talking, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and the things that they can kind of do to kind of inch their way up, right? Oh my God! But let's let's start about true. Let's start with Zenith though, because the roster changes seem to work out overall really well. We saw Shinboy and Punij, who we know are confirmed fraggers. These guys have the capability. I know that there wasn't an incredible amount of time to scrim and kind of shore things up, so for them to kind of hit the ground running and then make it to a 4th place position for this first week of groups was pretty impressive overall. And I think we'll see great success out of that roster moving forward. But what do you guys think needs to happen for them to kind of get themselves just up a little bit more? I think they have the capability for the 3rd spot, but just to kind of get in there, what do you think needs to happen? Trevor, let's start with you.
Yeah, Zenith is the scariest new roster for me when I look at it. Obviously, I mean, I have a long history with Shin. He was an original member of our team. I mean, if he was 18 4 or 5 months ago, he'd still be on our team. He just aged out, and we had to replace him, and then we got Bale. So I'm really happy to see him go to a team with this ability. And Poon's a close friend of everybody on my team, and we've always joked if we had an 8-player or 6-7 player roster, like Poon and Shin would be on it, like without a doubt. They'd be the next 2 people we added. And so I'm really excited to see them come together from this roster with Kick, who has a long history of success in playing with Poon. and Roth showed up this weekend, man. Like he was fragging that first day, 10 kills in one game. So for them to break into the top 3 or contest us top 3 teams, I feel like they just need more time, and they just need to group stages are a weird one because you got a lot of the bottom tier teams. We're doing I know, like for us personally, we'd go to our normal spots where we scout in, and there's 5 teams that you feel like they don't know how to rotate because they're just getting into this, and they're all sitting in front of you, and so you can have really big games because of that, and because you can farm if you get the zone, you can have really. And so I don't know if it's fair to judge them off this group stage. They're obviously a team that's going to make it to the final, and then we'll see where it all settles out after that. But I would not be surprised to see them break that 5th place curse they had the last couple tournaments.
Definitely. What are your thoughts, Logic? Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so originally, even let's say even before the Punij and Shimboy Zenith, I always thought, like, for a very long time that Roth has been around for a long time, and he came back with Zenith with a roster with Mystery and Leda and adding Kickstart, and I think even then, like, they showed like glimmers of like being a great team, but I think now with Punij and Shimboy, like, they added the kind of depth that I think they could have even possibly lacked, like with the previous roster. It's like as much as I think Mystery and Later are great players, I think that maybe there was some sort of key aspect between as forward that they could have lacked with the last team that Roth and maybe Kickstart were looking for in Punij and Shimboy. And I think going back to how Trevor was mentioning how like Punij and Shimboy were like very close friends with their team, I think if you look at Shimboy's track record as a player, he won Charity Showdown with Oath.
No,
and what Charity? Oh, that was Bale. Okay, never mind.
We won the 303 finals against EU.
There we go.
And he top fragged that tournament.
Yeah. So it's like he, even before like he was age gated and whatnot. Like, I think if you look at him as a player and you're a community member, you know that Shimboy is very like robust. There's always a joke where Shimzy once, like, he was I think it was Mime or somebody that was snaking on our team, and it was like well before PCS1, and he was like snaking, and then he's like, oh, like, there's no way he's gonna see me here, and then like Shimzy is like, if that's Shinboy, he's gonna see you there 100%. And then what do you know, Mime dies, or whoever it was dies, and then I just remember saying Shimzy saying like Shin don't miss, like he's not gonna like he's gonna tie the loose ends together very well.
I've said this before. Maybe I said it before that we started, but if Shin gets comfortable in that team and he gets in the right situation, he is legit the scariest player in the lobby. Like, that kid, like once he like gets like really friendly with those guys and comfortable, like he's insane. He's a nuts player. He was the one. Like I said, he would still be on Oath if he wasn't age gated. We just we happened to get Bale is a similar skill level player, and we won tournaments and we did well. So it was an unfortunate situation at the time. But yeah, Shin's we all love Shin in the Oath camp, and I'm happy for him.
100%. How about that, Ryan? Is there anything else you want to add, or do they cover it?
Well, I do want to say one thing. It's been a long time, and I'm sure he won't mind of me talking about this now. But back when I first was trying to get a team together for Radiance, after Worlds, basically, I was talking to Zampa, and I was asking him like, who would he want on a team? Like, what would he want to be doing if he was to actually keep playing and not not retire as he was? And the only name that he was like, if I am going to come back, I want to be on a team with Punij. And that was the one guy that he seemed to be like, yeah, I would want to build a team with Punij and I. And I mean, I feel like if Zampa is saying like, hey, this is the guy that I would want alongside me, then he must be a hell of a player. It's just what I gotta say. So
Poon's a player that puts the work in. That's like Poon's a player who he'll watch the VODs, and then he'll watch him again, and then he'll watch him again, and then he'll watch him again. Like, I've sat in Discord channels with him going over his VODs, and like an hour will go by, and he'll just bring them back up again, and he'll start watching them again because he talks about like, one little thing that like he's the kind of guy who'll be like, well, if we start crouching here, we'll cut sound and they won't have an audio cue. And like, okay, like he's very meticulous about how he approaches
little details. The very little details matter.
Yeah, he's very meticulous, and like if that team finds their footing, like I said, they're the next scary team to come up for sure. So
most definitely. And that brings us to our next team, Dodge, actually. And that was another roster change, and a relatively similar performance to what we saw from Zenith. You know, they had the addition, I believe, of Adam Lampalot and Danny G. And there was some really great shining moments. And I think that, again, the performance was relatively close to Zenith's in terms of, you know, they had some big moments. They had some moments where they struggled. But I think that I saw them win the matches they should win, which it's easy to say that, right? But sometimes some teams should win, and it just doesn't quite deliver. But was there something you want to add to that, Trevor?
I was gonna say that's a big aspect of being a good team, though. You have to close out the games you're supposed to win.
Oh, 100%. 100%. But yeah, no, there was a big difference I could see in the team from their previous tournaments going into these stages. But yeah, Ryan, what are your thoughts on Dodge?
Well, it's 3 out of 4 new players, so it's like it's really just Finna that was from the old Dodge.
Mhm.
I mean, Krop is still there as like their 5th player slash coach, I guess, but you're bringing in Lampalot and Danny G from the old dual roster who did not have the most success, and then Adam came from Illusion, right? And I mean, we all know Adam from, you know, way back in the old STK days, and he's always been a solid player. And so it's just one of those things of like you're bringing in all these players they haven't really played together. Lamp and Danny G has you know, played together before. Is this just like a honeymoon, like, hey, they're, you know, honeymoon phase where they're just doing really well, like because things just happen to be falling in their lap, or is it like, hey, is this an actually really good roster? It's like that. I don't know, one weekend is really not enough, I feel like, to be able to truly tell exactly how strong this roster is. So
Fair. Fair. Sil, how about you? What were your thoughts on Dodge?
Yeah, so looking at Dodge, you know, going back to the point where Ryan said, you know, like the only original remaining member is Finna. I think that, you know, Lampalot and Danny G both came from Duel, and Adam came from the team Illusion, which was his first team of his comeback. And I think if you look at it on paper, like I know Lampalot's a great shooter, and I know Danny G is also like the kind of very scrappy player that's always looking for a play. And you know, like sometimes like you even can look at Adam, like, you know, back in the day, like Adam was a very solid player. And I remember even his brother, who's now the coach of FaZe Clan, Diz, was always advocating that, like, if you want like a player that will always be there, it's always going to be Adam. Like Adam will always be the guy to whether lock it out or hold the, like, be the glue and holding the bridge together, you know, like no matter what happens. And I think this weekend was an example of them playing to their own strengths, of where, you know, even not the most fully developed team can learn to come together and like close out a game. And I think when you look back and look at how many points they garnered and like how many games they were able to make it deep, you look at like their positioning, and I think like for a newer team, it's much easier to establish your positioning rather than like your workability within each other as a team. So I think they, you know, work to their what can help them excel right now, and I think they can only develop from here.
100%. Robert, was there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, the thing that strikes me about this team, I don't know how like they run the team internally, but I assume it's got to be Lamp or Adam calling for that team. And if it is Lamp, like, you know, he has a long. I was always surprised when he went to Duel. I mean, just because I always knew he called, and Woolie's obviously the caller of Duel, and I kind of feel like they probably butted heads on that roster, which maybe lead us with. I don't know anything about it personally, but it's fun to see. I mean, I've been, you know, friends with Lamp for a while, and it's fun to see him, if he's calling for this team, have some success because of. I know he's a talented player in the right situation, so hopefully they can keep it rolling. But it is a lot what the other guys said. Let's see if this is a honeymoon and they're gonna fizzle out in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or if they can keep it rolling.
Like for me, like Lampalot's highlight was player one esports coming into MPL and then coming into phase 2. Like, holy crap, that was one team where I genuinely knew before they made it into MPL that they were going to be really good. Like, it was nuts, actually.
100%. 100%. But a similar situation, I think, with our next team here at Gascans. We saw Voxic and Honey Badger both come from 303. Niku's from Astra, so he came from a different region. And then Old List from childhood, since he's old enough to play now. And so, a lot of people have known Oldless for some time, right? And so he's kind of been around and you know, a fragger, a confirmed fragger, most definitely. But it's another one of those rosters I think had some great moments. I think they had one win their first day, if I'm not mistaken, and a handful of other reasonable performances. And I think it's safe to say that if they develop their team and shore up some of the shortcomings they had, they could certainly lock in a position. I'm confident that they will be able to lock in a position for PCS3. But again, on paper, it looks good to me. But Sologic, what were your thoughts on Gascans?
So knowing where Gascans came from, you know, two of them were previously with 303 Esports with Voxic and Honey Badger. You know, that roster was Voxic, Honey Badger, Landoon, and I think they were playing with Oldest for a while, but I do forget the fourth player. Anywho, so I actually work with Voxic for a phase that I'd rather not talk about, but D-Rich, there we go. D-Rich was their fourth. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot that name. But so I've worked with Voxic before on another project, and he's definitely going to be calling for that team. And I think knowing that Honey Badger's been competing for a very long time. He's been competing ever since me and Trevor used to play. And you know, like seeing him come up through the ranks and like, you know, establish himself as you know, like the player that he is now was pretty good. And seeing that, you know, Niku's was one player that I watched a lot of in the OC region. I think he himself was being, you know, even before Astra, he was on a team called Ferox, and that was the first time I ever really noticed him. And he was fragging out on Ferox. Like his numbers compared to his teammates' numbers, like you can almost add 2, 3, and 4 on that team, and he would have maybe even more than that number. Like I knew that he was one talent coming up through the OCE, so I think if they can put it together with another, like, you know, big name talent was Oldless. I think Voxic has all the tools surrounding him to make a great team, and I think if he can put it together, they could be, you know, like even better than what they did last week.
100%.
I am pretty sure Honey Badger's calling for that team now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And
for sure.
I definitely think he's the caller. I think that's, and I don't know. We'll see how they do. You know, watching from scrims and VODs, watching that team, they're a team that I'm accustomed to paying attention to because they're a late edge team like us. So we pay attention to the other edge teams where they go. And they do some questionable things. And, you know, they might be 3,000 meters apart from each other sometimes. And we're just like, you know, a lot of calls sometimes from us will be like, that's probably some really dumb split by that team. Let's just go kill one of them. I want to see if they can pull it together because they, like you said, there is a lot of fragging power on that team now, and a lot of, you know, there's a couple smart guys at the helm. So let's see what happens. I hope they keep it rolling. But yeah, I did want to mention those points.
100%. Anything else anybody wants to add to that before we go on to our next team?
Yeah, so it's we have a joke on our team that anytime we're coming in from like edge and we run into anybody from gas cans and we like say we get a knock on one of them, it's like we're immediately like, hey, like Gaxi, start looking out in the blue, make sure none of them are out there. Like, it's like there'll just randomly be one of them back there and they're shooting us in the back and another guy off like 200 meters the other direction. And we're just like, don't know what, that team is very unpredictable. And it's like, it can work sometimes. It it wins them some fights because, you know, sometimes you're used to a standard fight and they're throwing different things at you. But yeah, go ahead, Trevor.
They're like a team that is like allergic to the center of the circle. Like they will get a milli circle and they will go play the South Coast spread out by 5,000 meters. Like I don't know. They don't want the circle to be given to them. You know, they want to frag on the edge, and if you can make it work, like you clean up the most points that way. But it's a hard way to play the game. You know, sometimes you got to take the circles that are gifted to us. You know, if a small power circle comes, you're not going to catch us on the coast camping boats. We're going to be vibing with 3 vests and 500 ammo and shooting everything.
100%.
Small power classic.
I pray, let's get a couple. Maybe we'll save them for the final. Actually,
yeah.
Hopefully,
those used to happen so often. It was nuts. That's when I was like, all right, Oath is nuts.
It's out of the script.
Yeah, it's out of the script.
Oh man, but that brings us to T8. T8 was an interesting tactical 8 was an interesting team because they grinded their way through through challengers, you know, making it to that next level of competition and just showing that capability in the same way that, you know, I would say Gascans and Dodge did as well. Day one, they had fights that looked just completely different from previous times of seeing them, where they just looked dominant. Their teamwork was impressive. You know, it was looking like they were kind of clearing that gap and really starting to push ahead as a team. The casters were talking about it, and they were saying, you know, this looks like a completely different team, like night and day. Like maybe this is some people on Smurfs. We don't actually know. But it was just it was crazy. You know, I think the second day was a bit harder for them. But what do you think needs to happen for them to find that consistency moving forward? How about you, Ryan? What are your thoughts on T8?
So T8's always been, at least historically, something I've always felt bad for them because I feel like almost every single tournament that I've ever like seen them where they're right on that like cusp where it's like, hey, top 8 qualifies for, you know, the finals and they get ninth. And I've seen it happen like 3 times or something. It's like they're always right there where it's within reach, and then it's that last game that they just can't pull it together.
Mm,
And so they I feel like a big day, like a great start to a tournament or to like a group stage like this is exactly the type of thing they needed, instead of it just being like, hey, they're constantly chasing that last position.
mm-hmm.
And as for like what it is that got them to there, like I'm not sure if they change anything up exactly. I mean, I know Lush is new to that team, and so is, I'm pretty sure, Enraged Zealot, right? Is that
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe so. They both came on at the same time.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
like right around like PCS2 time.
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm not sure if like it's just like they're figuring, you know, things are working well, or if it's just like they had, you know, one great weekend because of just circumstances working out well for them. But I mean, when you have as good a weekend as that, and like you're moving forward, and you're a team that's always been kind of like, you know, chasing that qualifying position, when like you get to play more comfortably, you know, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you don't have to like be trying to play like scrapping for every single point, because now you can just, you know, focus on what you're doing and be like, hey, we do this, and you know, we'll find our success. You know, that's
100%.
that's really it. So
100%. Sil, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, T8 for me was always like Logic did, Ryan did mention it where he said, like, you know, like he feels like they're like kind of unlucky at times. And I think there was always a time where I saw like, you know, some pretty good players on their team, you know, like have like a flash of like, you know, where they just absolutely destroy some of these teams together. But and then seeing it now, even like through PCS2, there was always there was one stat that was going on throughout the weekend with their success, was that like their points total after this week was like it like was getting close, and then I don't know if it passed, but it was actually really close to the points total of the first piece of their first outing together in PCS2. So yeah, I think they may have made it a long way, and I think they really played to their own game
Mm-hmm.
really really well on the weekend. So seeing like some of those old household names, like, you know, we have Lush, you know, a very experienced player
Mm-hmm.
like within PUBG. We have Steezy, another very experienced veteran player. And honestly, like seeing Steezy come on to the camera to explain just like, you know, what it's been like competing like for such a long time was really really like refreshing, I think, because
Yeah.
I think as much as all those guys have been competing and whatnot, to really have like a good day or like a good weekend overall was just really good to see.
100%. 100%. And Trevor, was there anything about T8 sparking
Yeah,
the
they
interest
kind
for
of
you?
kind of play off what Sean's saying. You know, it's there's a lot of like really there's a lot of experience on that team. Two really old school players like Steezy and Lush for, you know, they've been playing the game since maybe before Sean and I, and that's saying a lot because Sean and I have been playing since, I mean, we were playing in the first qualifiers, you know. So
Yeah.
but those guys have been around for a long time, and they, you know, they've kept grinding. They've definitely had a little bit of a slump, so it's good to see them rising to the top. And you know, I can't really mention more than what the other guys said already. Just I'm happy to see them have a good day. Let's see if they can hold it in through the next week.
Definitely. Definitely. And that brings us to the last team to round out that, which is Oath. Obviously great. Oh man,
Oh.
listen. Oath is a great team, great roster, great coach, great players. You know, I was surprised to see them have the difficulties. You kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, Trevor, where you're playing with different people in the lobby, some less experienced, and so your rotations, things of the sort, are just gonna kind of be crammed, and it either works to your advantage or it just entirely pulls everything apart. But obviously, we know improvements will be made. They'll find their footing. They will succeed. They're going to contend. I guarantee it for a top 3 position here. But how about a unbiased opinion from Sil to start up?
Yeah, I love those boys, and like I've seen like a player like Relo. I've seen him go from like being a promising NPL talent to now like at the beginning of this year, and like even still now, like full-fledged superstar. Like I saw this guy pulling off some of the craziest like multiple kills like I've seen, and I just sit there, I'm just like, he's just better. Sometimes I just look at players like Relo, I'm like Relo, Brailfrost, like Pat Caps, any of them Snakers, I'm just like, dude, they're just better than that guy. Like they go around at like with these like with just like hyper mechanically like incredibly insane like skill, and just roll over teams. Like I've seen them, like where it was the last day of like charity, I think, where they won like 3 out of 4 games, like or something like that, and like they were just like it looked like they could do nothing wrong. But I think a lot of change has come within just the overall like PUBG esports landscape, and I think Relo himself has picked up a lot more of the duty within the team of like like calling and whatnot, from what I hear. And a lot of the team understands that as well, is that like like even though you can have like you can literally flex your talent to roll these teams, it's like the other teams can easily learn to counter that with their own team play. So I think like the circle will always be a factor, but I think Oath is a team that can always put together like great performances in terms of points, or just like wins in general. And I think like there's never a time where you can count Oath out, just because of how much talent they have and how well they can put that talent together into big playmaking, because they have so many people that can literally, I'm pretty sure, just 1v4 teams, because I've seen it before, and I've seen my fair share of it, where I just like I'm like, do not underestimate any of those guys, even if it's just one guy. Like, don't give him anything.
100%. How about you, Ryan? What are your thoughts on Oath?
I mean, I think I kind of mentioned it before about how they're one of those teams that are similar to Sonic, similar to SDK, that you can have their players in bad positions, and it's just like, how the hell do they get out of it? Like how are they winning these fights? How are they like, as a spectator, when I'm watching half the time, and it's like I'm watching Snakers or Rello, it's a fight going on, and I'm like, oh, this is a bad push, and they just make it work, and I'm just like, oh, I mean, normally I'd say it's a bad push, but I guess it's not for Snakers. I guess it's not for Rello, because they just win it. Like, I don't know, but yeah, it's just one of those teams that across the board talent for every single player, and you're never gonna like. I mean, when you have every single player as good as they do, they're always just going to be one of the top teams. Like group stage is not, I'm not worried about them. They're in 8th right now, but we all know that they're going to qualify for finals, and that's all that really matters. It's not like we're playing for big money through groups. All you need to do is just make it to finals, and
I'm pretty sure
we'll see.
Snickers is trying to get $500 for damage. That's like his main goal. So
You heard it here.
Farmer Tig for that one.
Yeah.
I mean, at a point, we definitely had a tough weekend, and I think it comes down to, like I was kind of touching on it earlier, like there's a lot of new teams in this lobby, and a lot of them ended up just like on our side. And like, I mean, there's like a couple of times where like I know Rilla was looking into the circle, and he was like, what do we do here? Because we're not a team who raps. We're kind of a team that pulls up and fights, because like the goal of the team is to have each player, like you said, the goal of the team is I want each player to be able to 1v4 any team in this lobby. And I want everyone to trust that within themselves. And we've definitely gone through a little bit of a learning curve since our roster change in the previous tournament, or prior to the previous tournament. And Rello has taken on a lot more responsibility. And I think there's been a little dip, like he feels, in his personal performance, even though everyone knows he's an all-star. And I would say this past weekend after the games probably led to our most constructive talk we've had as a team since the inclusion of Pat. And like Monday, like we didn't even scrim. We just watched the replays, and we talked about a lot of team issues and got a lot of things worked out. And then I'm really happy we were able. Every team goes through bumps and curves and valleys, and I'm happy we had that week one, day one of the top 16 qualifier for a big money tournament. So, I told the guys today, we had a good scrim day today. I said, well, can these guys get 150 points this weekend so you can shut them all up? So that's the idea,
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward. I'm not worried at all. My guys are the reason they're at the top is because they work harder than anyone else, and they this kick in the ass for them this past weekend gave them like a renewed drive. This week they're coming on stronger. I've noticed more intensity and more care into what they're doing and focusing on improving, and that's as the coach, that's exciting to be part of those conversations, and I'm looking forward to this weekend.
I do want to say
100%.
one more thing, if
Okay.
that's fine.
Of course.
So one of the things that I've always talked about, at least when it's like when you're in a region where I feel like the skill disparity is pretty large between like, top teams going as it goes down. Like it's not like the main point here is that I feel like sometimes some of these top teams can get into habits where like they're almost reliant on being able to get out of these situations though, where that they just get out of it by pure skill. And I mean, that's great because you can get away with that in NA and you can always be a top 5 team in NA. But it's like we haven't had international tournaments, but as soon as they start coming back, I'm worried for, the top NA teams going out that playing in NA for this long and not getting that international experience that playing against other teams that have players that are as good as Relo, Snakers, Luke, Alo, Tig, like you're not going to be able to do that as consistently and you're going to get punished. And that's just one of my biggest concerns for a lot of these teams and a lot of the really good teams in North America is that that's going to be something that happens.
Yeah,
Incredibly
I will always say that international is a whole nother game, whole new
Yep.
level, always. And like from experience, I can say that for sure.
To argue your point, though, and I think when it comes to international, it's going to be you have to look at it like a clean slate. It's
Sure.
and who's going to put the most work in. I'm not, I feel confident in my team in any lobby because we'll scrim that lobby once or twice, or we'll play one play day, and we're going to go back home and do our homework and come in with a new game plan and a new mindset. So, and if we ever are able to get back to those types of tournaments, like I'm really thankful for this time in PCS because there is a little bit of a skill disparity from the top to the bottom, but it gives us a lot of time, a lot of reps to flesh out like all those little issues, like little team spats or arguments or dumb stuff that hangs up teams. Like it gives us a lot of time to talk that out and figure it out. Like that's one thing I think STK has on all the teams is they've been together for so long, they've worked all that out. But once we've been together for that long, those boys ain't going to stand a chance, So, so I look forward to the future, and I'm thankful for the regional competitions. It's like such a good time to build a team. It's because you're constantly feeling good about yourself too. You don't feel good. Like I can tell you from experience, we went our first tournament as a team. We went to Sweden. Our first tournament is out. Didn't go so hot,
Oh yeah.
and that didn't feel very good. But we came home and we talked a lot of things out, and it resulted in a success. So
Came out swinging at the next tournament, that's for sure. Holy crap! Yeah.
100%. I'm confident in Oath though. I'm very confident in Oath, and I would say I know that internationally, it looks like the people have talked about NA internationally always, but I think that skill is getting to that point where I don't think that there's a big difference between our top teams and other regions' top teams. I genuinely don't. And sure, different teams play different ways, but I'm confident in our boys, and I think we have a lot of talent and a lot of really great rosters as of current.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And one thing I would add to that is when NPL went away and like the teams consolidated. We talked about consolidating now, but at the start of the year there was another consolidation of power, which was a team like ours was formed and a team like Soniqs was formed, and that's another thing where we may have had weaknesses in international competition before, but now the teams that are like we have a clear defined 3 because they're the best for a reason, and I'm pretty confident, in the future. So
100%. Let's talk about the bottom teams though. Nobody in specific. We're not trying to send any shots anybody's way, but some of those bottom positions that are definitely struggling, to really find their footing, to find the balance against some of these teams that have either been doing it longer or just happen to have some of the most skilled players on those rosters. If you guys, let's kind of role play a little. If you were to be in their shoes as their coach, right? What kind of changes would you make? Let's say your team
You
is
mean,
What's up?
I was gonna say I am, so.
well, let's start with you, Ryan. Let's start with you. What's your mindset on that?
I
What
barely
kind of
made the
changes you make?
Well, actually, honestly, we're not trying to make too many changes. I mean, I think the main focus right now is that one of the things that keeps happening, we're just losing somebody randomly before we even get like actually are able to like get into zone or get into an actual fight. Like we're already down, and that's already, disadvantage to start with. And I think that's one of the main things we're focusing on. But outside of that, it's just kind of like, keep working at what we're doing. And PUBG is just a game of where it's like sometimes things just don't go your way. And
Mhm.
like you can just like Trevor basically was talking on that. Like some things are just different, and you're just trying to figure it out. And I feel like we're a team that will always get better as it goes on, and will adapt to things way better than other teams will. And so it's like as far as like the Rumbler specifically, I think we'll be all right. We'll be fine. I mean, for other teams though, I'm I mean the only other team that I can like say for sure like I'm not worried about in the slightest would probably be like BTS. I mean I don't know. Look at that roster and I just can't imagine them not at least getting kill points enough to be able to be top 16, even if they like have to figure out things as they go.
Mhm.
And I also trust Gobang is gonna, do what he's got to do to help that team out. But I mean, I also see that like a lot of the teams that are in the bottom don't even have coaches
Yeah.
from what I can see. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's just on the IGL at that point to just figure out like sit down, or team captain or whoever it is to just sit down and figure things out. But as far as what to do specifically to change things, it's like you just have to know your players and what their strengths are and play to your own strengths, I guess. So,
Definitely. That you made a really good point. With teams like Veritas, Duel being another one of those teams that isn't quite
oh,
finding that success, but we know Duel can deliver. We know those players can deliver. We know they have the talent, the capabilities. So it's just a matter of getting that. And I think they fit into that same category of somebody who will find a way to certainly qualify. 100%. 100%. Trevor, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Sure, I feel like there's a lot to talk about here. Comets is another team that that is if we're going off this judging, they're not in the top 8. That's a team that had 2 roster changes. They brought in Leda and Vegas, and Vegas is he's a huge name player. He's an OG, and he's been around a long time. So that's a team I expect, like on paper, to do a lot better. Even if it's just, I feel like Vegas could solo qualify for this tournament if you wanted to. And another team that catches my eye a lot that's not doing so hot is Team Clueless. They brought in Sharu, the NPL mercenary. That's the guy who would just he'd play for anybody, but he just picks. The joke with him I always remember is he just pick up random points. That guy will just, the game will end, it might not go hot, and they'd be like, well, Rue had 4 kills. Like, okay, well, like, I guess we got 4 points.
Mhm.
And Hambino is on that team now, and Ham is obviously he's a big name streamer now within the community, but I've always thought he's really good. Like Ham is
oh yeah.
really there's
Definitely.
no matter what, like if you put that much time into the game like that man does, he's super committed, and playing the game every day, and super committed to stream, obviously. But when you put that much time in, it is, you're going to be good. And he's super talented, and I really hope he gets the opportunity to show, what he's made of as far as PUBG goes here. And they're probably another team I would expect to maybe make the final. Like groups are like a time to work things out and figure it out.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
and them, and those are the 2 teams that like catch my eye right away when I look at the below the top 8.
Mhm.
So.
Definitely. How about you, Logic?
Yeah, I think to add to Hambino, I remember when Hambino first started competing and he was playing with Noble, and I was like, where did this guy come from? Because he hits shots. And
Yeah.
I remember him like hitting some shots, and then some of these guys are like, who's this Hambino guy? Like, he's so damn good. And I'm like, I don't know either, man. Like, and then looking at him now, like, big streamer and whatnot, he plays a lot. Even my boys play with him sometime, and he's a great player. And I think like Clueless is one of those teams where I'm not worried about Veritas, Comets, and I think one team in particular that really showed up last PCS was actually ATC, and they were truly a dark horse because everyone kind of knew like this meme of ATC where they don't scrim, they just kind of like sign up and just kind of play. But then they were not joking last PCS. They were actually they were really up there, and it was
They were like 4 or 5 points off STK.
yeah, and they was it Marcelic that I think it was Marcelic that was giving Tig a serious run for his money regarding like the kill leader and whatnot. Because this guy, like, from what Sharpshot told me, is that like he plays really aggressive, and like it's to the point where okay, he just kind of kills everybody, and then like that happened, and I'm pretty sure like with the addition of Sharpshot and seeing their team as it is now, like they're definitely capable, and I do want to see more from them. But I do know that like they will bring it back, even though like somehow they're, like not even seen in the scrim lobby, so you kind of go in not knowing what to expect. But like they could just come out swinging because I guess Marcelo just doesn't care who it is.
100%. ATC is another one of those teams I think that has that capability and that potential. I'm excited to see what they do week 2.
Yeah. And I think Duel will also take time to like figure out their own like how to make it work, like stride. They'll find their stride very soon, I think.
I mean, another team that we could talk about from comparison from last PCS to this one, Liberate. I mean, weren't they actually had a solid showing last PCS, and
They made finals both times. I think they ended 14th each time in the final. So
I thought they did a lot better last time.
they came out swinging in the first week, and then they fell off towards the end.
Okay.
I think they were like 5th the first week, and then they ended in 14th. But they, that's another team that went through 2 roster changes, so, and they're probably, still finding their footing. They have the worst looting position on Miramar. I don't know why they loot there. It's like really dumb. They're getting killed by us on one side and Soniqs on the other. So that's their choice in life, so
we talk about how it's just annoying them being there.
Yeah, they don't get any loot.
It's like they're
they fight over the one car spawn they get with us.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're looting where like you would see like OG, the Korean team OG and Entis though. Because I remember the first time I saw that happen, and I saw them loot there, and I was like, why of all places would they want to be there? And it's like, oh, they have esports car spawn, this that. I was like, okay. I mean, I'm not gonna judge it, but like if it runs into what we want, then we're gonna.
All I'm saying is if we decide to go for it, they very rarely have a better shoot than Rella, Snickers, or Bale. And then I think it's funny because I'll be watching scrims, and like I said, we'll be taking their car on one side, and there'll be 3 Soniqs on top of them on the other side. Killing the guy on the other side of their split. So it's an interesting choice. But, obviously this is a return of Bahawaka as well, a very legendary player, and he's been around forever. And, I do want success for those guys. They can just choose a different spot to loot in Miramar.
Yeah, they also have another player that I was like looking at for a while was Hello Senpai. He comes from the CIS region, and I know a few players from the CIS region, but obviously their English being limited and whatnot makes it kind of hard to kind of gauge like where they're at and whatnot. But I have heard like a couple things, and I think Hello Senpai like coming in would be a very different point of view to where I guess like whatever he's used to playing in Europe versus here, because I guess he's with like you could say quote unquote less experienced players outside of Bahawaka, because you can look at that, and it kind of from here on paper it kind of looks like a mismatch, but if he could show them what's up, like who knows what they can turn out with. So
100%. Was there any other topics we wanted to touch on before we move on to our predictions? Nope. Okay. All right.
I think we're good.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about that then. Let's talk about the predictions. So, when it comes to our week 2 predictions, if we all get 3 picks, and I'm completely unbiased here. I'm just talking about 3 picks of who I have my eye on for week 2, who I think will perform well. I think come into their own, or potentially continue to perform well. I guess since I'm talking, I'll go first. I think my first pick is Zenith. There's not a lot that I can say about Zenith that we haven't already said, right? They're incredible. They have incredible fragging power. They're just kind of rounding out the roster. They're finding their footing. I don't know if you guys had watched the interview with Roth. Roth talked about it a little bit more in depth after one of the matches about the changes they're making and finding balance within their team. So I'm excited to see what they do moving forward. My second would definitely be Dodge. I was really excited when I saw that roster change, and I was hoping that it would work out for the benefit because you had talented players coming from Duel onto their team, and it seemed like they should have performed better on Duel, but once they got to Dodge, they seemed to hit the ground running. And very similar to Zenith, I think that we'll see continued success. And then my third pick would definitely have to be Duel. I like those players on that team. They have the capability. Again, rough start, but if I can bring it up, if you recall back to was it PCS2 Group Stages where I think Oath had 58 points on the last week, but the other weeks blew it out. So it showed that you could have like a reasonable performance on one week, nothing too crazy out of the blue, not top in the charts, but then have 2 other great weeks and totally just make it all happen. And so I would really like to see one of those 3 teams between Zenith, Dodge, and Duel have that same sort of success where they find their stride and they continue moving forward. But Trevor, what would be your 3 picks of people to look out for, biased or unbiased?
I mean, who's going to finish top 3? Or are we betting money? Because that's the case.
I would say 3 picks to just keep your eye on. It doesn't necessarily have to be a top 3 finish.
Sure. Well, I think my boys are going to come out swinging.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping it's the Oath show this weekend. Like I said, they got a lot of drive this week. I can tell you, judging off people say scrims don't really matter, but the scrim day we had before last Friday and the scrim day we just had before tomorrow, night and day difference. And yeah, so I'd say we're definitely one to look out for. Other than that, I do agree with you on the Zenith pick. Like I mentioned a lot about them earlier. I think that's a scary team. I think that is the one team who I think is going to get better with time here and contend for those top spots. So they're definitely one I will keep my eye on. Plus, they loot right next to us on each map, so I have to pay attention to them anyway. And then teams to watch. I am gonna. This is an easy pick, but I am gonna say SDK because they had a very strong weekend. But back-to-back days like that, even for a team like them, is pretty rare to have that many points put up. So if they can keep this pace, then that's pretty frightening.
100%.
That's it. So I'll definitely keep my eye out on those boys.
100%. Ryan, how about you?
So we're just picking like for this specific weekend, not the overall standings, right?
Yeah, just this next
Okay,
coming
so
week.
all right, so this specific weekend, I feel like VTS is probably my team that I'm like want to keep my eye on the most because I think that they're going to be stepping up a lot more compared to their first weekend. I mean, I still feel like STK is going to be one of the top teams going forward. Obviously, like they're going to be in the top 5 in points probably over the weekend. I don't see that changing, but I think VTS will have a much better weekend. Team that's going to I think see probably some of the most improvement from the last weekend. I think will probably be Long Live Ranger. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen that team do that poorly. Like I mean, I know they didn't do like extremely poorly, but I had higher expectations, and I still have high expectations of them. And so I think that they'll do a lot better. And then I mean, I'm obviously going to say my own team as well. Like that was our worst ever PCS performance of any weekend that we've ever had. So, and I don't see that happening again.
Definitely, 100%. 100%. I'm confident. How about you, Sil?
Yeah, I think I'll leave out like STK, us, and O for a bit because we all know any of our teams can come out like super swinging. So just it could be time of the day, the weather, anything could happen. But I think the first team I'm looking at to do a lot better was definitely Veritas. I think we're a team that kind of runs into them a lot, and they're a team where they have all everything is laid out for them, and if that they can put it together, they can become a very scary team. And I think, like knowing like Gobing as a coach too, like he's a coach buddy of ours, where I'm sure he puts in a lot of work, Keenan puts in a lot of work, and as much as those guys like can put it, if they can put it together, they're definitely going to be coming out like coming for like all of us in North America, because they're mechanically and on paper a very good looking team. I think outside of Veritas, I think this is going to be a little bit of a twister, but I think Team Clueless could possibly put a much better showing this weekend. I think that like having a mix of experienced players, even though they're not all from the same region, can kind of generate this like very snowbally like killing machine where like all of them are very capable, and I think that with just a little bit of luck and just a little bit of things going their way, that they can like really pick it up this weekend, along with Duel. And I feel like like bias or unbiased, I feel like knowing Wooly as a player and knowing that he has a kind of team where having Cherry and having Penta's original duel, like Wooly and Penta on the same team, original duel.
All they need is game line, man.
Yeah, like even Linksy, like I think if they can get their comfort down and their how much they can put together like in their production up, that I think they can put out much bigger numbers than they did this past weekend. And I think they can easily make a climb for the top 10 leaderboard very easily.
100%.
You heard it here first. Soniqs are not a team to watch out for from the coaches.
I left this out because I know we'll always be out there.
Right, he went the unbiased route. I respect it. Well, boys, that is all I have for you for today. I think we'll be meeting back up here next week to discuss how week 2 went, and kind of push.
I did want to shout out, I know Taryn tweeted that she finished up her last hospital visit and she's doing well, and say we're all rooting for her and have been rooting for her. And Gunnar was going to be a member of the show, and he'll probably phase in here eventually, and we'll fit him right in. And just want to say some kind words for them, and take all the time you need, and we're happy everything went well, obviously.
Of course.
So, 100%. She's
100%.
super strong. Yeah, super strong woman Taryn is. That was incredible to hear.
Of course. Most definitely. Well, thank you guys for joining me on this beautiful night. Have a great I guess weekend, technically speaking, and with your games. I wish you all three the best and your teams the best, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week, man.
Yeah, thanks for putting this together. Like I always wonder like when I'll get together with like coach friends and whatnot and just be able to talk like just about the scene in general, because we always do the talking like little bits here and there, but I think this is definitely much more of a fun and open way to go about it.
We'll get better and smoother at this as we go. So
yeah, because there's a lot more to us than just the coach title, and like I think like if people are even like down to like pick our brains a little bit, I think a lot more will come out than people might expect.
Yeah, definitely 100%. Well, thank you, gentlemen. That'll be it for us here. Chat will be right back with some peeping games and so forth. But gentlemen, thank you guys for your time. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting.
Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Good night.